Who is this man? Who is this man, and why does it matter to storytelling? He may not be important to storytelling per se, but it's important to the story I want to tell you, that I want to share with you, and it should be important for you from now on as a reference. So, who is this man? The truth is, he quote this: "Everything we see hides another thing, and we always want to see what is hidden by what we see." Think about this for a minute. Everything we see is not just an object; it's just not a thing. There's more to it. There's a representation of how we see the world, its own perception. So the audience, it's complicit in the stories that we choose to believe. When we tell a story, the audience embarks with us in the same story. So for this to happen, it must be in accord with the worldview that already exists in the mind of our audience. The mistake that marketers make over and over again is to try to appeal to logic, is to explain logic. It's like a bullet point presentation. It's the ingredient, it's the material, it's where it's from. Uh, Things that we dismiss as fast as we hear it because we don't care for that. That makes for a commodity. And we don't like commodity because we are not a commodity. We are unique. There's something about us that we bring to the world and we want the world to see. And we make that mistake over and over again. So the question is, why do we continue to do it if it doesn't work? Why every time we get a product in our hands, the first thing that come out of our mouth is this is made of this has this and that, and why do we do that? Well, maybe it's not entirely our fault. From schoolyard, that's how we've been trained. We are trained to memorize a book and then stand in front of the class and explain it, or better yet, repeat it back to the class. So when we grow up and we are in the business world, that's what we do. But it doesn't apply anymore. So here's the problem: the audience doesn't want to be presented with a bullet point presentation because simply we want to know how it relates to us. So to achieve that, we must tell a story that adds value and invest the experience that the customer will have as being part of the process. The audience wants to be understood. He wants to be engaged. He wants to be heard. And that's the only way to change that. It's to stop appealing to logic. And that's why it brings me to this. I'm gonna try to say it in French. If I said it wrong, please correct me. Give us a like. Ceci n'est pas un pipe. I think I said it right. But it translates to this is not a pipe. If you heard my podcast In Motion Mastermind, I've told you before that I study art and I'm very passionate about art. And that's why sometimes I make reference to art and the real world and why it applies to our mystery man, the one that I presented to you at the beginning. Because every artist tries to express how they experience the world through the artwork. But this person in particular is telling us this is not a pipe. And that's how it translates to the marketing world. We cannot continue to advertise. It doesn't work anymore. The audience doesn't care about the facts anymore. They care about whatever the product they choose or whatever they acquire, how it makes them feel. Feel is key here. They care about the experience. They care about if the story that the marketer is telling it's aligned with the worldview that we have. If those things are matched with self image and or self identity, self values that we have, I mean, then the marketer has done its job. If not, it will fail. It will fail because it will fail to connect with the audience. It's make no mistake here. Every person, we all are marketers. But you must believe this story, and all your team must believe this story in order to engage with the audience. Otherwise, it just won't work. So, how do we solve our reader? How do we stop telling people the facts? How do we stop appealing to logic and start appealing to the emotions of our audience? What? How do we stop doing this automatically? How do we unconsciously stop from presenting ingredients and like a shopping list or the materials of, I mean, this point presentation? How do we stop doing that? We tend to think that advertising will do the trick. The old days of the TV are behind us. That's how they get away with that, because you were glued to the TV and you didn't have any other choice. But now those advertisers learned that the hard way, because every social media platform has given us the choice that we can stop seeing ads. We're not interested, we dismiss it. We have the choice to stop being interrupted. I don't want to see any ads. So what do we do? That's how we learned that the hard way. You cannot bring the TV world to the internet world. It doesn't work anymore. The world have shifted. Our audience, it's more knowledgeable. They look for the stories. They want to know what this means to the rest of the world. They want to know more than just the object, and that's why this statement, "This is not a pipe," is so powerful. For starters, this is not a pipe. It's the image of a pipe, but deeper than that, what does it represent? So how do we solve this riddle? What's the answer to the riddle? We tell stories. We have to learn to tell stories. Not a narrative, because yes, every story has a narrative, but not every narrative is a story. And it's important that we know the difference. It's important that we learn this, that we know this. We have to be able to tell stories that appeal to our emotions, that the ideas behind the stories are worth spreading. This is why I bring to you this artwork by this mystery man that I'm about to reveal in a minute. This is not a pipe. This artist challenged the observer. This artist was ahead of his time, because now we're realizing that as marketers we have to learn to tell stories that engage our audience. But this artist named Rene Magritte, back in 1929, painted that artwork. This is not a pipe. We don't want to be a commodity. So the objects that we perceive, we don't want to perceive them as a commodity. We want it to be part of us. And that's why this surrealist painter, this surrealist artist from Belgium, challenged the observer. He took objects, I mean ordinary objects, and portrayed them in a context that challenged the observer's preconceived ideas or preconceived perceptions of his reality. We make our own reality. That reality is shaped by uh, whatever fed our stories growing up, whatever we imagine our future to be like, the memories that store in us. I mean, that's our reality. That's how we see the world. We see the world through that lens of the reality that was shaped for us. Images, sounds, smells, words awakens that part of our brain that's called imagination. There where imagination lives, there's a story that we tell ourselves. And that story we project to the world, how we want the world to see us. It's when we access our imagination, when we get invested in the story that we're listening, we trade places with the character. We trade places with whatever the storyteller is experiencing, and we experience that as our own. We we search in us for for whatever memory, and we relive the same experience. That's what neuroscience have proved so far. That's a different video, but I just wanted to throw that there for you, that this been proven. We trade places, we lived the experience again. All our senses, when our senses are involved. And as storytellers, as marketers, we must know this. That's why storytelling is so persuasive, but also a great tool to communicate our message. Because the audience and the storyteller form a bond. There's trust. But we gotta be careful with that, as I'm gonna prove to you in the next slide. Rene Magritte challenged us back in 1929 to look beyond the object. Because, yes, of course, this is not a pipe. It's an image of a pipe, but what it represents? It represents an intellect, intellectual person, a glamorous life, a pleasure. What? What represents to you? What is important to you? How do you see the world? How you perceive the world? What's your world view of the object? And I think somebody who did a good job with that was Steve Jobs. He wanted to transform the lives of his customers. He wanted to add value. He wanted to have products that the audience could feel identify, that there was a type of person or self-image, and how we portray that to the world. It's We have to go beyond what is apparent. It's just not an object. It's how we see the world. And if we can effectively portray that in the story, then we're not a commodity. We are more than that. And it brings me to this great. Uh, I know you heard this before. I know you've seen this before. With great power comes great responsibilities. But before we get there, I want to bring your attention to this. If the dream is a translation of waking life is also a translation of the dream. Why? Because however we see a reality, that's what it's going to be. Whatever we think of the world we imagine, that's what it is. And the world, and whatever we imagine, is the world we think. And that's why it's a great responsibility of the storyteller to use this with caution, to use it with responsibility, as I'm gonna prove to you in the next minute. There's If you don't tell a story that is authentic to what you're trying to portray, it will backfire. And believe me, it will. Simply because you can't fool people all the time. They will find out, and they will, when they do, they will tell a story as well. But the question is, will they tell a story of praising your brand, of speaking positively, or how they affected their life, or they will tell a story that will destroy it? Because if they feel like they've been cheated, they will tell a story of how enraged and violated they feel, and it will you may never recover, and if you do, it will take a long time. As is the case of this example I bring to you, Volkswagen. If you haven't heard of this, it was a scandal. They abused the power they had when they told the story that matched the story that the audience already had in their head, that they were contributing to a better planet, that were contributing to a cleaner planet, that they were, by buying this car, it says something about themselves to the world. It says something about what they wanted to communicate to their children, that hey, I'm buying this car and I'm leaving a better world for you, a cleaner world for you, and I'm doing it and doing this responsibly. They abuse that power. They use that power to match the story of the audience, of their customers. Back in September 2015, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency tested over 600,000 cars, and found that these diesel motor vehicles were not what the people thought they were. Volkswagen violated the Clean Air Act by putting defeat devices or a computer software that cheated the tests that they ran for the federal emissions. They were supposed to contribute to a clean world, and they didn't. And when they were trapped in a corner, instead of coming clean to the world, they continued to sustain the story until it was too late. And they just say, yes, we screwed up and we're sorry and they apologize. But they did more than that. I mean, they violated the trust of the self identity that these people had. You don't do that. If you're gonna tell a story and be ethical about it. I mean, tell a story that yes matches the story in the mind of your consumers, and do it ethically, because what it cost Volkswagen was over $7 billion of recall of all these cars worldwide. Not even mention the lawsuits by shareholders and car owners, and the image, the reputation that was damaged, tarnished, and the trust they violated. So use storytelling with caution. Craft a story that yes matches the worldview of your customers, but do so responsibly. Do so in a way uh, that adds value, and it's aligned with the self-image of your customers. So these are the three takeaways I want to leave you in this video. One, yes, craft a story that will help and add value to your customers. Two, appeal to the emotions, not a logic. Use all the senses to tell the story. Because if you trade places, if the customer can trade places with you, then you have formed that bond of trust, because it matches the story that they have in their head. Three, very important, very important. If you tell a story, even if it's a lie, it's not a lie if the customer makes it so. Like a placebo effect. If there's a benefit for the consumer, then it makes it true. I know this may be contradictory and counterintuitive, but it is so. If it's a placebo effect, yes, but if you are bettering, if it betters the life of your consumer, then yes. Now, the problem is when you act against that, if you act as a selfish marketer that's just looking for profit, and there's not a benefit for the audience, for your consumers, for your customers, then you're violating the trust. So if you like this, leave us a comment, tune in. Soon, very soon, in the next few days, we're gonna bring a web class of how to dive into storytelling, how to go deeper, how to go beyond. How do we apply Rene Magritte's view of the world? How do we challenge the observer? How do we challenge the audience to change the preconceived ideas? How you can better your marketing campaigns? You can follow us and also subscribe to the channel. Follow us in Motion Mastermind podcast. You can find us on Spotify or Google Podcasts, and let us know your stories. We will continue to share our stories, our experiences, so you can improve your marketing campaigns. It's Telemap in Motion Mastermind. Look me up, follow us, and it's been a pleasure to be here with you. Until next time, give us a like, tune in. We will come soon with a web class. Until next time.